I almost want to call and rename this episode and all the episodes today, The Sky is Falling, because pretty much everything we've been talking about today has been about the global economic recovery being threatened by everything that's been happening with the Delta variant. But today we got some new data coming from the US about wholesale inventories, which is very important because wholesalers are part of the value chain. And if their inventories are up too high, then that might be a forecast into how poorly GDP may actually turn out to be. Now, some of these things could be supply chain issues, but some of these things could also have other multivariate causes. But before we get into that data, I want to give you a definition of what we're taking a look at here. So this data comes from the US Census Bureau. Wholesale inventories is the stock level of unsold inventories that wholesalers hold, obviously. The wholesale inventories figure is more significant than the sales figure because high or low inventory levels reflect how strong or weak retail demand is, which determines whether manufacturing production increases or declines. Now remember, we like to take a look at the manufacturing data because it has a nice strong relationship with GDP. And this definition goes on to say that wholesalers' stock levels tell you whether GDP is going to expand, contract, or stay the same. So this is a nice little indicator, though it is, somewhat lagging here because it reports this data that's already pretty much 2 months old, according to this definition. Now, for those of you who need a visual or more visual learners, low stock means high demand in shops. So you got a lot of people shopping here, lower stock. High stock means weak demand in shops. And here you have a lot of wholesalers holding on to this. So with gold prices being up and silver prices being up, what do you think the data shows in May? Well, inventories were up and they're up at 1.3. Now, the inventories, increased inventories for durables, 1.2% versus 0.7% in April, namely lumber, metals, and furniture. Inventories were higher for non-durables as well, namely drugs. So inventories are increasing, which basically lets us know that there could be somewhat of a tepidness happening within our economy in the US, which may be one of the reasons why people are diving into US 10-year Treasury notes and driving those yields down, helping us, gold and silver stackers, with prices being or remaining elevated. Now, here's another monkey in the wrench here. Check this out. Supermarkets are stockpiling inventory as food costs rise. Retailers are doing this, but wholesalers are also behind this. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. I'll start here first and I'll scroll back up so I can read a little bit more of it. But here's a quote from David Smith, Chief Executive Officer of Associate Wholesale Grocers, Inc., the nation's largest wholesaler for more than 3,000 grocery stores. And he says, "We're buying a lot of everything. Our inventories are up significantly over the same period last year." Now, this largest wholesaler for more than 3,000 grocery stores recently purchased 15% to 20% more inventory, mainly of packaged foods with longer shelf life. Now, here's the reason why he states that inventories are up, specifically within the food sector. Supermarkets are stocking up on everything from sugar to frozen meat before they get more pricey. Prices, inflation seems to be behind the story for inventories being up in the food sector. Let's continue. Girding for what some executives anticipate will be some of the highest price increases in recent memory. Insane. Some supermarkets said they are buying and storing supplies to keep their shelves full amid stronger demand. grocery sales in the US for the week ended June 19th rose about 15% from 2 years earlier and increased 0.5% from a year earlier, according to Jeffries and Nielsen IQ data. Stockpiling by food retailers is driving shortages of some staples, grocery store industry executives have said, and is challenging a U.S. food supply chain already squeezed by transportation costs, another price issue, labor pressure, again, we're not fully employed yet in the US, and ingredient constraints. So some supply chain issues here. The move is a reversal from last year when consumers hoarded groceries because of concerns about food availability, disrupting the food industry. Now retailers themselves are stockpiling to keep costs down and protect margins. So behind this wholesale inventory data, at least in the food sector, seems to be some inflationary pressures. Now, of course, this doesn't argue down the idea that the Fed has about transitory inflation, but it does keep the idea of inflation in our current culture right now. Next week, we are going to be seeing the new CPI data, and with yields coming down so aggressively now in close to -1 territory. It's been in negative territory for some time, but now close to -1 territory, with CPIs likely going to be somewhat elevated next week, we should start to see prices for gold and silver edge up higher. So, I have my representation of my silver stack here. This is a, actually, what is this? Oh, yeah, this is from the Republic of Chad, actually. This is a silver ounce from the Republic of Chad. So this guy is going to be feeling pretty happy next week. And hey, this is just one of the things that happens. We're going to have these issues where the global economy is going to potentially suffer a bit, though the winds of change are in the direction of the economy pushing forward. Now, this doesn't mean that we're going to revert back to where we were. We're still in recessionary times, but I still foresee the economy pressing forward, inflation expectations pressing forward, and that also being one of the reasons why we will see gold and silver prices rise. Again, once rates are still relatively low and inflation edges up even more, we will start to see our metal friends rise. So guys, let me know what you think about this new wholesale inventories data in the comment section below. Thanks again for watching. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you're new. It's Black Bullion for goldandsilvertoday.com.